about that today. I'm going to put you on the spot, Bonnie, because you just had an amazing encounter in your new home. I know you've just moved to Idaho, back to Idaho after desiring to for so long. So, if you don't mind, will you share with us a little bit about this last week?
Yeah, sure. I turned 44 on Tuesday.
Yay! Happy birthday
So
again.
yay. Yeah, that's awesome. And for folks you might not be able to see, but I got a hugging ring from
Oh,
and my finger's pointing to you just by showing my ring, but
ah,
from from Tina gave me this hugging ring. She often says, I wish I could hug you because we're not in like the physical room all the time, and so it's super, super sweet. Anyway, um uh, yeah, so I had an opportunity to do like a storytelling. That's what you wanted me to share, right?
yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly.
I had the opportunity to do a storytelling event on the topic of touch. And touch is something that's been kind of a new experience for me in my transition. There's the physical aspects, which is being on hormones, and the mental, touch comes to us in so many different forms. Um, but I started to notice a new experience with touch. And so part of the journey was to talk about, what has my experience with touch been throughout my life? And so part of that was kind of going um, back in the past, one, to kind of talk about childhood. What was my experience? How did that impact um, how I experienced touch in the future, especially since there was some trauma as a young person that really just kind of took me far away from, I think, the physical aspect of touch or being present to touch. Um, and um, starting hormones changed that for me. I can physically be in my body more and live less in my mind, which causes me to, have a new experience with it. But I think the other aspect to it was, yes, going back and kind of like looking at my experience and um, trying to see it differently or see it more fully or whatever. But the other aspect was me physically being back in Idaho. And
Mm,
so, I was in front of about, I think, originally total is they were going to be about 250 to 300 people. I don't know how many people actually were there. It was a lot. It seemed like a lot. um, and so I was in front of these people who are all Idahoans, and people who, like look like the people I was raised around, and just people I saw growing up. And so it was really interesting, and it was really difficult. I wasn't really nervous at all the whole time to the lead up. I did a lot of writing, a lot of preparation. I was feeling really good about it. And then I got there, and then I just kind of was started noticing that I was having this just a lot more anxiety and fear and vulnerability, a little more than what I had thought. And so, um, so yeah, so I mean, I think, but so it was uncomfortable. I didn't feel like I spoke eloquent, and like I wasn't able to like like say what I had written down so well. But I was honest, and I was real, and I was human, and I was open about my experience with life.
yeah.
And one of the things that I noticed, and I think this is part of like moving forward, is that, I wanted to end on the note talking about how excited I am about the future of touch and the future of, the experiences that I'm going to have. And I wasn't able to really kind of go there um, uh, fully, partially because I don't know that experience yet, because it's not an experience I haven't had yet. But in some
Right.
ways, I'm still kind of working through to get to that space. You know what I mean? Like I'm still kind of scared and nervous and anxious, and it's still difficult to do those sorts of things. And so
Yeah.
it's good and it's great actually. I feel good about it, and I'm glad that it happened, and it wasn't a failure in any way.
Oh,
Uh, I'm excited for what is to come, I guess. So I don't
yeah.
know. I feel like I've
Yeah.
talked a lot already. Sarah saying hello, saying hello.
Mhm.
Want to say
Hey,
hello?
Sarah. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So
Yes.
I just have to tell you, and I, I don't know. I think about the people that God has put in my life a lot. And when you told me originally that you felt like you wanted to move back to Idaho, I had this flashback. Oh, he's going back to the beginning
Mm,
because there's something new and exciting. And sometimes, and I know this from experience, my experience is so much different than yours, but definitely relevant and necessary for me to move forward. I've realized that things in my life kind of are circular, and you get going down this road and you get to a point where you desire something that's not happening in your life. And for me, I always think, okay, where was it in my life that I've experienced that before that I
mhm.
desire it again? And so I go back. If I can go back to that moment and reassess it, then a lot of times I can gain new wisdom that I can move forward in this next season. So when you just told me before that you wanted to go back to Idaho, I had started praying that those opportunities would align, that you'd be able to come back to that space, and that you'd be able to have a new experience that is going to create a stronger foundation for you to move you forward into this next season of life. So for me to hear you share, it's like, oh, I feel like God is answering my prayers. So I just wanted to tell you that because that was encouraging for me. I'm sorry it was uncomfortable for you, but I agree with you. I think it's going to be a positive move for you to move forward and create some new opportunities for you that maybe you hadn't even considered before.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, and it's like that intuition. I intuitively know that there's a special kind of healing and a special kind of experience that I can only get from being here. So I am eager and excited about that. And I think the other aspect is the layers of like, because I've transitioned and because I haven't been here for, 10, 12 years since I left, it's like I ran into people that I know from my past who don't know me, who haven't, met me as Bonnie Violet, or maybe they read about me like on social media or whatever. And so but they hadn't actually been in the same room with me or talked with me, and so it's interesting navigating, again, that's just like another layer of just
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's just another layer of the experience that can make it seem a little bit more complicated, I think,
Hmm.
if
You
that's
just got
okay.
to embrace that complication and trust God to bring you through it. I'm learning a lot about what peace looks like in this season of
Mm,
my life. I realize that as I get more grown up, that I carry a lot more baggage, and a lot of
mm,
it's unnecessary. And so but I don't. I feel like I need it, but I really don't need it. And if
mhm.
I can just allow God to take it off of me and let go of it, I'm realizing that I'm finding new levels of peace and joy in my life.
Yeah.
So,
Do you
uh,
do,
go ahead.
do you think that that you have maybe you said something about having more baggage later in life. Do you think maybe it's about, because I've had a similar experience where I feel
Yeah,
like I'm more present to and aware of my baggage. My baggage was probably there all along, but
yeah, that's
like
probably true.
I don't know if maybe if your experiences is as you've gotten older, you maybe have the time, or like I think for me, I actually have the capacity, like I have the ability um to really unpack this baggage, or to even notice that it's there and to kind of like work to let it go, whereas I don't think I had the ability. I don't know if it's a little trite or whatever. It's that statement that God never gives you more than you can handle.
Hmm.
um and I do believe that sometimes I have been guarded from the full truth, or was unable to see the fullness
Hmm.
of what was happening because I wasn't able to comprehend or understand that at that time. And so I feel like as I've gotten older, it's been, you know, I've been able to kind of grab some of that baggage. But I think one of the challenges that I've had, or sometimes that I struggle with, is feeling like I get stuck in it for too long. Like,
Hmm.
how do I move? How do I move beyond? And then I think the other aspect is um, when other people aren't willing, like when other people are part of that experience, but they aren't willing or don't want to like engage with you around some of the experience or the conversation, so that you can get maybe more information, or things like that. And so sometimes that can feel a little frustrating, because not everybody gets to a place where they can unpack some of these things, or even don't see it as something that needs to be done.
Right,
And
right.
it might not be for them, you know?
That's right. I think that's something that we need to always remember. Some of the things that I carry around as baggage aren't necessarily baggage for someone else.
Yeah.
And we need to not inflict, for lack of a better word, that on other people. Because if they are free of that or they don't have any, um, I don't want hesitation or any bondage, is maybe the word, with that, then I certainly don't want to put mine on them.
Yeah.
And that's why, for me, as a woman of faith, I I release all that under whatever what you just said. You know that
Hmm.
I have peace in Jesus, and I believe that. So, and I find a lot of times when I unpack it, even if I'm unpacking it by myself, a lot of time I find that a lot of this is self-inflicted because
Yeah.
I don't know if you struggle with this, but sometimes I don't think very highly of myself.
Mm.
And even though I'm doing well and I'm thinking and doing all these things, I find that the deeper I go, I realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I had such a negative perspective of that in my life.
Yeah.
And so I need to learn to let that go. That's a baggage. But you're right. As I get older, I have eyes to see that baggage a little easier than I did when I was younger. And maybe it is because I'm not so consumed with raising children and running everyone's schedules and doing all these things. But I'm grateful that in this season, I can find new levels of peace. I can find new levels of joy. And it's freed me up to go back to the beginning
Hmm.
so that I can be better prepared for my next season in life, which I don't know what's going to look like.
Yeah.
And as scary and exciting as that is, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Can you share maybe an experience of you um, going backwards to move forward?
Absolutely. You want a past one or a recent one? Because
Whatever's coming,
okay,
to your heart right now.
well, um, I'm going to go with my recent one because I'm a mature Christian woman, and when I say that, I'm sure for a lot of people they get a visual of lots of different things,
Hmm.
and that's okay. We all do that, and I realized that I don't want to be a stereotype. And when I started to look and see some of the baggage that I was carrying around, a lot of it was baggage of tradition and baggage of how I perceived myself and baggage of how other people perceived me.
Mm.
And so holding true to wanting to do something different and going back to the beginning because that's what's worked for me before, I went back to the beginning and to the church. I consider myself the church. The Bible says that because I believe in Jesus, because I want to live according to his word, that me, not the building, not the place where I go, not the guy who stands in front of me and tells me things every Sunday morning, but me, I am the church. And so I wanted to understand what that meant and why I was struggling with some of these areas. And I wanted something different. I don't know if you ever get caught up in the same old thing over and over. Well, being a mature Christian woman, I read my Bible daily, and sometimes I find myself going, "Oh, I've read this before."
Mm.
And I don't always allow myself to learn something new. So what I did was I went back to the beginning. So for me, in that context, for those of you who don't know, that would be the book of Acts. So the book of Acts is the birth of the church, according to the Bible. And so I went back and I started reading what the birth of the church looks like. And I have to tell you, one of the first things I did, because I know I am regimented, I'm very systematic. I have already been there,
Mm.
but I wanted to go back to the beginning and gain new perspective. What new perspective can change how we see things, how we experience
Yeah.
things, how we can move in things, the people we can associate with. It all has the ability to shift. So
Yeah.
what I did was I listed everything out that I thought I knew about that, and I decided I was not going to consider that when I was reading it this time.
Mm.
And so I went back to the beginning and I read all these similar passages, these passages that I was familiar with. And as those things come up, because they do, because I've been there before and you see the same
Right.
road, I said, nope, I'm not going there. I want to gain some new perspective. And I
Mm.
have to tell you, it has totally changed my view on who I am when I say that I'm a mature Christian woman,
Hmm.
a totally new view as to what it means when I say that I'm the church. You know, I've gotten to a point where I don't want people to call me religious because I'm not.
Hmm.
But because I go to church, I get kind of put in that category, and I've learned that that's not who I am.
Hmm.
But I would never have learned that had I not decided to go back to the beginning and challenge some of those things. Now, all that stuff that I had in my mind, a lot of it is true. So it's this. It wasn't a challenge against truth and false. It was a
Right.
challenge in how I was receiving it and how I was allowing it to move my life in a positive direction. Because
Hmm.
that's a desire of my heart. I want my life to move in a positive direction, not just for me, but for all the people around me. And to do that, and if I'm going to say I'm the church, that's the kind of response I want people to have when they're around me.
Hmm.
So for me, it was going back to the beginning, studying out, and then allowing myself to make the changes. Because I didn't
Hmm.
realize how religious, for lack of a better word, I was in tradition, that I couldn't have a real experience with the Spirit of God so that I could be in this world in a kind, loving, generous, merciful way.
Hmm.
And sometimes that tradition or religiosity gets in the way of being the church the way God designed it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah.
where
No.
I'm at right now.
Yeah. No, I love all that and I can relate to it. I wouldn't necessarily use some of the words that you've chose, but
Yeah.
like I feel like I've had like I wouldn't necessarily say I'm the church, but I do feel like I'm having the experience of holding and honoring and carrying myself in a way that's different and maybe more mindful or maybe you know what I mean? Like I feel like it's kind of in alignment with what you're talking about. Um, and also like maybe for folks who like for me, the recovery process,
Hmm.
getting sober, really has a kind of a format. They do an inventory process where you kind of just look and you find out what's good, what's bad, that sort of thing. But I think the thing that's really helpful and something that I find myself challenged by, I think I've said this before that I often feel like God fails me, and it's
Hmm.
not God that fails me, but it's my understanding. And so oftentimes there's points in my life where something that I believed so wholeheartedly, I come to see differently.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes that can feel so contrary to what I thought I knew that it makes me want to like just throw it all out, you know,
Hmm.
instead of really trying to figure out like, I think we just having to kind of like, look at it a little bit, explore it a little bit more. Like, is this thought, is this idea, is this way of hearing something that I've learned, is it suiting? Is it helping me? Or could it help me more? Like, is there more from it that I can get from it? That's what I heard a lot from what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have and I'm asking because I'm curious, do you have a standard of what you hold to, so things that you value? Like there's a lot of stuff out in the world, a lot of things that may momentarily make me feel okay, but in the long run is hurtful to me. And so I don't want to have those in my network of things that I grab on when I get under
Yeah.
under the fire or when I'm looking for peace or whatever. So I just wonder because I use my Bible obviously because I'm a Christian. But what tools do you use outside of the Word of
Mhm.
God for that, if any?
Yeah. Well, it kind of depends, like there are sometimes I'll come across things on YouTube that other people are sharing or talking about. I really love Maya Angelou and her work and what she's talked about. I kind of get it a lot of different places, but I think there was something that was coming up when you were bringing up this question. Um, I think the thing for me sometimes isn't always about there is this idea of seeking something outside to kind of inspire
Hmm.
me or help me understand myself. But I think sometimes I need to be able to look at what it is that I'm doing and
Hmm.
ask why. And to try to do it in a way that is not judgmental. Because I feel like that's what's been a lot of my experience where maybe maybe I'll do something. Like there was a time when like drug use was good for me at one point in time. Um, and I know that might sound controversial or whatever, but I do feel like it was the best thing I could do for me at that time. It eventually became not good for me, and I had to be aware that this thing isn't working for me or isn't helpful or I've grown beyond it or whatever. So I think that's some of the things is that I could have very easily um, just said that that was bad, that was wrong, and lived with shame and lived with the difficulty and still did it. I don't think it was morally wrong. Uh, I believe that God put it in my life to help me uh, get through life and surround it. And it was a way that it was interesting because I wasn't allowed to. People like me. I was told I'm not supposed to say that, but people like me. Um, where can we go when we're told we can't go to church? We're told we can't go to the Bible. We're told we can't. You
Who
know what I
told
mean?
you that?
So,
That's what I
well,
want to know. Who told you that?
well, there's a lot of people who say that.
See, they don't get to say.
And sometimes it's the unsaidness. Like I know for me, I never once heard growing up that trans people or gay people or whatever were um, going to hell or were wrong but I was never told that we existed. And that was the problem. That was the challenge for me because I didn't see myself in the Bible, because the Bible and the way that it was taught to me or the churches that we're in didn't help show me who I was with God or through God. I had to go find that elsewhere. Um,
Have you ever asked yourself why?
well,
And
the
we're talking 44 years ago, or 40, let's
mhm.
say 38 years ago. I think that culturally things were different then. And so things that they were trying to help people relate to were different. And I think
Well,
there's a lot of reason because I know, I mean, just knowing from this is my perspective, I hope you don't mind,
no.
from where we grew up in that little tiny town in Idaho, there weren't a whole lot of people um, that there were not a whole lot of different kinds of people there. I
Right.
mean, I
Well,
think about
we
it.
all had to leave. We all left. Yeah, I mean, if you were a person of, you know what I mean? Like, if you were just not like everyone else there, you would leave. So that I think that was part of the thing. It wasn't, I don't think that anyone was like trying to, um, we're like, shh, don't talk about that.
Well, yeah,
It's
okay.
more of
I was
just
like,
like,
I
I
don't think
think,
they even knew that was, you know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, part of it again, and gay, trans, queer people have been around for forever, and we've been in religious spaces and all that sort of stuff. But there was like this invisibility or this inability to talk about it. And I think part of it too is just because I had no perception when I
Mm.
heard, because I can hear the same words today, and I can hear, oh, that's it, that sounds like that reminds me of my trans experience or my queer experience or this, that, or the other. Like I can see myself in the Bible um, today, in the same stories, and I can see my friends in the Bible that I had never saw in there before because I have a different perspective that I didn't have when I was younger and wasn't given to me either in those spaces because they didn't talk about it in that language or in those ways. I didn't have the ability to see beyond my own experience and my own experience that didn't look like if my experience didn't look like everyone else around me, which is true for all of us to some degree. But I think when you're outside of that heteronormative, like if you're just kind of outside of it's hard to explain. Yes, I do think that it's different now. And yes, I do think that there are a lot of churches and a lot of spaces where trans and queer folks can feel better in. My question is still why. Like I've gotten so much life and I've experienced God so much outside of those places that sometimes it's like, but why try? Because there still are a lot of those places and there's a lot of those people who seem to have the mics, seem to have the megaphones, who are saying everything opposite. Um, and yes, I can do the gymnastics and I can like no, 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 no for me, but it's still kind of I don't know, that's where I go with it. Yes, I think I can see me and I can hear me and all that sort of stuff. But at that time, I wasn't able to do that. And because I wasn't able to do that, I had to kind of go somewhere else. So I think if church wants to do a better job, if religion or spiritual spaces want to do a better job, they have to help us and recognize us when we're smaller, when we're younger. Like we need to be in communities that are more reflective of the people that we can become or who we are, I think, wherever possible.
I'm tracking with you.